Yes, yes. Hatman Strikes Back, daily boxing news. But tonight is a night flight, so we're not just talking about boxing in this one. You guys know the routine by now. Whatever topics you guys want to cover, within reason on this platform, of course. We can use euphemisms and talk around stuff. But we're going to start off with some boxing. If you can call this boxing. Before we get there, shout out to everybody in the live chat. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. We got Mario. We got YK Warner, Rastafari. I'm just going to call this person Idol. This Hatman, big up. Do you have any update on Chris Andre boxing? Love his videos. No update on Chris Andre. Haven't heard from him in quite some time. Big up Striker. Big up David Fisher. Big up June Sports. Yes, yes, Wagwan General. We got the, is it Kawa Squad? Just call him Squad. JR, big up. BH, big up. Boxing Minds. What's up, Kieran? He says, I listened to your video about my Lions in the Camp fighter. My question is, should Yard retire or move up to cruiserweight? He's clearly weight drained. The thing is, even if he is drained, having made 175 for too long, I don't think it's going to be any better for him at 200 pounds cruiserweight, because of many of the reasons I stated in that video. The way he's training. Going up to cruiserweight, he's going to need to be hitting a lot harder. And he doesn't train to be able to throw consistent hard shots for 10, 12 rounds, in my opinion. Big up Simon Jones. Big up Johnny Gaffer. Big up Don. Big up Baz, a.k.a. Chainsaw. Has anyone ordered an in-flight meal? Big up, let me tell you something. Rich Franklin. Mac, the Sweet Maths. Big up the Sweet Maths for the super chat early. He says, what do you think happened to AJ before Ruiz won? You know, they say that one day they're going to reveal what happened. But Eddie Hearn has always denied that AJ got chinned in the gym. I tend to suspect that's BS, and he did get chinned in the gym. So my best guess is that somebody lit him up like a Christmas tree in sparring. Maybe it was Joey DeWaco, maybe it was somebody else. Maybe it was more than one person, because he didn't look right. We got the Sweet Maths. We got Mr. Will Guitar. Stuart Amali. Says, would you like a sweetie? Chris Eubank Sr. there. Indeed, June Sports. He says, something definitely happened, and the proof is the way his dad was acting. Trolls About said AJ said he had medical issues. Big up the Place Boxing. So, if we look at this picture on screen, big up the Sweet Maths again. You got Jake Paul posting this on his social media. Good rounds today. Jared Anderson on the far left. In from that, you've got Frank Sanchez, Jake Paul himself. Then on the right, Lawrence Okolie, who's looking more like Martin Bacoli these days. Look at the size of him. Yeah, this guy's looking more like Martin Bacoli. Is Jake Paul getting great prep? Is he really sparring all these guys? Or did he go to a gym where these guys already were, maybe training with a different fighter, and just get the photo op? I suspect it's the former. He is actually sparring with these guys. Are they sparring full on? Are they told not to go too hard on him? I don't know. What do you guys think? The bigger question for me is, why is Lawrence Okolie so keen to help Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua? Or is he actually a mole, a spy, in the Jake Paul camp for Anthony Joshua. Bear in mind, Lawrence Okolie used to be managed by AJ's management company, 258. Is that what's going on here? Or for some reason has Lawrence Okolie got an issue with AJ? Is that what it is? If so, why? I'd like to hear your theories on that. Yeah, that's a good point, Hannibal Beats. He says, I just got here. Are Anderson and Frank Sanchez training together? I thought they were fighting soon. And me too. The fact that they are apparently, if we take this picture at face value, training together, not necessarily sparring each other, but training together, would suggest that they're not preparing to fight each other. Now, somebody in my Element group just said that the Anderson fight isn't happening. Maybe Anderson's turned it down. And the IBF have gone back to Richard Torres and offered him the fight again, because he already turned it down previously. But apparently they're now offering it to him again with something like 3 days to accept. Encircled says, if he is sparring them, they're going easy as hell. I suspect you're right. And to put it in perspective, that has happened even with far more established boxers over the years, where sparring partners have told of being restrained in the gym. I remember Tommy Morrison years ago, some of his sparring partners claimed that they were not allowed to go full throttle in sparring, and they were held back. I think this was towards the end of Tommy Morrison's proper career, because he had a hiatus after he tested positive for HIV. But prior to that, to the back end of that first real career, yeah, there were sparring partners that said they weren't allowed to go full on in sparring against him. They were told not to. Someone says, Bacoli versus Okolie, make it happen. Hannibal Beat says, in America we say Okolie is knock-kneed. Yeah, he does look a bit knock-kneed in that picture. Yeah, Baz says, I thought Okolie was built like Wilder, not so much now. Well, the thing is, Lawrence Okolie was a fat kid growing up. So that period where he was kind of slender was a bit of an aberration. You know what I mean? It was like not the norm for him. He slimmed himself down during most of his amateur career and his pro career up until he moved up to bridgerweight. And now he's gone back to his default setting, which is to be a heavier guy. He obviously likes his food. Encircled says, Fat Okolie has been better to watch. The Great One says, is Dylan White fighting Okolie? Well, I saw an interview with Dylan White with Spencer Oliver and some young lady. I don't know what her name is. And Dylan White was very dismissive of the fight. He said, first of all, I didn't get enough notice. Secondly, the offer was derisory. So the way Dylan White's talking right now, it doesn't seem like he's going to take the fight. And as I said on yesterday's stream, I'd be surprised if he took the fight, to be honest. Bear in mind, it's going to be in Nigeria. All right, we can move on from this particular story, unless you guys want to continue talking about it. And we can resume the night flight. Ishmael says Okoli has secret animosity to AJ. Yeah, he might, but the question is why? What's up, Charlene? He says, she says, the size difference. He's not getting full treatment. Maybe Okoli is doing it for the money, maybe. He's a double agent. Okay. Shout out to Charlene. Ishmael says, don't know why. Why though? AJ done a lot for Okoli. Shout out to Poco Roca. The Place Boxing says that animosity is no longer a secret now. You know, sometimes animosity can spawn from sparring sessions. Some guys can literally tear each other's head off in sparring, and afterwards they're best buddies. Dylan White is apparently like that for the most part, but perhaps it weren't the case with him and Okoli, or perhaps there's some other personality issue. With AJ, I suspect there's probably a higher chance that he'll fall out with people because of a really tough sparring session with them. That's the impression I get. Hoopla says, from the interview I saw with Okoli talking about the Jake Paul thing, it sounded more like he wanted to show Jake what heavyweight power is like to warn him away from the AJ fight. I didn't see the interview. If it did sound like that, I don't buy that motive from Okoli at all. Why would he care? I mean, is he that much of a good Samaritan? I don't think he'd care that much. Kieran says Africans tend to stick together. I imagine this is with the approval of AJ. So you reckon Okoli is basically a double agent, a mole, a spy, an AJ spy in the Jake Paul camp. Maybe trying to stick it on Jake Paul to soften him up for Joshua. Is that what you're saying? Okay, East is another person that thinks the Tyson fight was staged. Newsflash, it was not staged. It was simply a 60-year-old man who looked terrible in the build-up to the fight in all the training footage I saw. Not the silly, edited training clips that were going all over social media, but the unedited training footage that you saw on Netflix and the shoulder programming, and certainly at the open workout on Fight Week. Mike Tyson looked terrible. He looked every bit his 58 years. People are very naive thinking that, oh, Mike Tyson could have KO'd Jake Paul whenever he wanted to. Give it a rest. No, the fight weren't fixed. It was just a 60-year-old man looking like a 60-year-old man. That's all it was. If anyone was holding back in the fight, it was Jake Paul. Once he realized he was in there with nothing, rather than going for it, he was holding back. Indeed, Encircled. The aura around Tyson just never dies. Amali says, Hatman, would you go to North Korea? What for? What's there that I need to see or experience? I mean, you tell me, I'm ignorant. Why would I go to North Korea? Exactly as Encircled said, Tyson was losing to Journeyman 20 years ago, and people say he could beat modern heavyweights now. It is bizarre, bro. That's interesting. East, all of the excuses about, oh, Mike was on drugs back in the day, wasn't focused on boxing. He's 58. Between the Kevin McBride fight and when he fought Jake Paul, he was also doing loads of narcotics. The guy was bunning herbs all the time. That's why he's got that mush mouth and a croaky voice in his podcast. Because he was always bunning herbs. So he came from bunning herb doing podcasts with all sorts of injuries because he was doing stem cell therapy in the run up to that Jake Paul fight to try and fix his broken body at damn near 60 years old. And you think that, oh, he went in there and threw the fight. Give it a rest. Honestly, the Mike Tyson aura is so ridiculous that people think he could have just gone in there and blasted Jake Paul out. No, this is naive people falling for those edited clips of him hitting the pads. 2 or 3 seconds where he throws a combination, cut, edit together with another 2 or 3 seconds throwing a combination, cut, edit. And people think when they splice together all those short clips, oh, he'll destroy you. Give it a rest, man. Seriously. There was no fixed fight. He was a 60-year-old man looking like a 60-year-old man. That's it. Body's broken, no energy, nothing. No coordination anymore. Indeed, bunning Bumberclaw herb on a daily. You don't go from that, bunning all the herb and all that type of stuff in your 50s to then jumping in and, being a wrecking ball in the ring. It don't happen. He could barely walk. Just go back to the open workout on Fight Week, which is on Jake Paul's MVP channel, and look how terrible he was in the ring. He was terrible. He had to take 4 or 5 seconds between each combination, and he was painfully moving around the ring. You could tell that his legs and his hips and everything just weren't working well. Terrible. Maybe he had a broken back again. Spinal. I think I broke my back. Spinal. Spinal. Mike Tyson's a wild guy. I'll tell you who else is a wild guy, or was a wild guy. ODB. If any of you ever looked into, or looked at those ODB stories from people who knew him, other members of the Wu-Tang, that guy was so wild. That's right, spinal. I broke my back. Spinal. He says he looked great versus Roy. That was 5 years ago, though. No, he didn't look great versus Roy. He looked like an old man versus Roy, and Roy himself is an old man. It was like just like Andre Ward said, it was two uncles fighting at a barbecue. That's what it might look rubbish in that fight. It's just that Roy looked terrible too. And obviously Roy, a much naturally smaller man. Now Mike looked a little better back then than he did against Jake Paul, but it was several years earlier. Many smoke sessions earlier. My back is broken. Yeah, that's right. It's spinal. My back is broken. Maxwell Grimes says, Hatman, side note to something you said in a previous stream. The Indian Americans were not indigenous. They traveled from Asia and colonized while also tribe killing, so colonizers got colonized. If they were the first ones there, then it means they're indigenous. And those Native Americans have been there in the Americas for thousands of years. Meaning, if they colonized the land, which was, if they moved into the Americas 12,000 years ago at least, then they're indigenous. Kieran says, ODB when recording Ghetto Superstar got on the track by mistake. Yeah, I heard about that story. I saw Praz talking about that. Hasn't Praz been sent down for some type of political machinations? YK says they weren't the first, they met the Olmec heads there. Well, the American continent is very large. We shouldn't assume that it was the same people in every part of the American continent. So, for example, even when the Europeans invaded the Americas, the natives of North America and the natives of Southern America look very different, or they look somewhat different. Right? So there may have been different populations and different phenotypes, but we put them under the collective umbrella of Native Americans. Maxwell Grimes, I don't think you really understand the concept of what I'm saying. You're saying it's BS. I am not denying that they moved into there from Asia. What I'm saying is, if they've been living there for 12,000 years at least, then at this point, you have to class them as indigenous. Like, how long does a group need to live in a particular geographic location before you class them as indigenous? How far do you want to go back? Because you could go back hundreds of thousands of years and then say, oh, well, this group is not indigenous. And that, like, how long do you have to live somewhere before you're allowed to be classed as indigenous? 1,000 years, 2,000, 10,000? Like, how long? The Native Americans have been living there for something like 10,000 years or 12,000 years. Well, they're not indigenous by now? And you don't know what happened back then. You don't know whether they came in and wiped people. You don't know. You're speculating. So, cool it down with the speculation, claiming that somebody wiped somebody out 12,000 years ago. How do you know? None of us know what happened 12,000 years ago. We can speculate, but we don't know. It's a long time ago. You know what I mean? As far as the Olmec heads, yeah, the Olmec heads are very interesting. Here's what I will say. There are populations still now in Asia of dark-skinned, Afro-haired people, such as the people of Papua New Guinea. You can find dark-skinned, Afro-haired people still living in the jungles of the Philippines and Thailand. And even in Japan hundreds of years ago, those same dark-skinned Afro-haired people, like Melanesians they call them, right? There were Melanesians even in Japan. Was it Melanesians, right? These dark-skinned Afro-haired people that were behind the Olmec heads? I don't know. Because to me, the Olmec heads phenotypically could also be like Samoans, people who look like that, or Oriental type people. Baz Newton said, he wants to go there, Baz Newton. He says, humans may not be indigenous to Earth? That's always an interesting topic of debate and conversation. Big up Adeola Depot in the chat. He's talking about shook ones. Has to be that verse from Prodigy will go down in history. Yeah, that's a great verse. An iconic verse. He's stuck off the realness. Would be the infamous, you heard of us. Big up Kayvon Green in the chat. He says, so what? The world has always had groups taking land from others, and disease is really what wiped most of them out. Well, I have to disagree with that. I think that was like a colonial bit of propaganda claiming that disease is what might wipe most of the Native Americans out. No, it was actually enormous massacres. The disease was like, oh no, we didn't really kill them. They just all died of smallpox. Nah, bro. I don't buy that at all. If you research what was actually done to them and done to their kids, they were systematically erased. You know what I mean? It's like in Australia. What were the natives of Australia? Killed off by some type of flu or smallpox? No, they were systematically wiped out. It's not that disease didn't kill any of them, because they did introduce new diseases into the Americas, but the notion that the vast majority of them just accidentally died, oops, because of it is, I've never bought that notion at all. I think it's nonsense. A lot of the massacres were covered up. To this day, still are. Christian Bale actually did a movie. I forget what the movie was called, but when he was being interviewed about the movie, he was very candid regarding what was done to the Native Americans, right? The targeted extermination of them. He was talking about that. But shout out to Kayvon Green for the super chat. Okay, Majesticra says, thoughts on the song Self-Conscious by Nas and Prodigy. Is it a new song? Yeah, thank you. The movie's called Hostiles. That's right. That's right. Is it a new song with Nas and Prodigy? I'm not one of these old timers that wants to live in the past forever. And I say that to say I'm not interested in rappers from the 90s making new music. I'm not interested in listening to Nas now, or any of these washed up old rappers. Okay, apparently it's an old one from way back. Then maybe I haven't heard it. Maybe I haven't heard it, but I've heard so many songs over the years. Don't quote me on that. Hannibal Beats says, have you seen Apocalypto? Yep, seen that. Great movie. Hannibal Beats says, I don't listen to new rap songs, to be honest. Me neither. But, you know, I can listen to old stuff. But I'm talking about old rappers making new stuff. I don't listen to that. And to be fair, I was never really a big fan of Nas. Majestica says, it is about conscious and subconscious mind and how they work, etc. Okay, interesting concept. CBC Boxer says, Nas still makes great music. To each his own, right? But for me personally, I was never really a fan of Nas to begin with. I never found him to be particularly deep or profound or anything like that. Don't get it twisted. He changed the game when he came out with Illmatic. The way he was flowing and everything, he changed the game with that. Everybody started rapping like him after Illmatic came out, trust me. But Illmatic aside, yeah, I was never really a big fan of Nas. Not like I hated him or disliked him or anything, but just, I didn't find him to be that deep the way other people, you know, thought about him. Because I was listening to like the Wu-Tang and Wu-Tang affiliates, and they were way deeper than Nas. People like Killer Priest. He was all the way out there. Do you know what I mean? In deep space. So when you listen to Killer Priest and Sons of Man and people like that, you go back to Nas, it's like, this is kind of diluted. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, let's talk boxing, Hatman. What do you want to talk about? You can talk about anything. It's a night flight, so if you want to talk boxing, let's do that. Maxwell Graham says they weren't exactly the most moral people. Child sacrifice daily even 300 years ago is pretty brutal. Not very peaceful people as portrayed. Well, see, the problem is that whenever a people are colonized, they are demonized first in order to justify being conquered and colonized. So, of course, with the Native Americans, and you know, you have to differentiate between the natives of North America and the natives of South America and Central America. And you also have to realize that there are many different tribes. If certain tribes in North America were doing bad things, you can't then paint all of them with that same brush. Oh, they all did bad things. It's silly. Yeah? And during the same time when you did have brutal cultures like the Aztecs who were carrying out human sacrifice, in Europe, they were hanging, drawing, and quartering people. It's not like Europe was some utopia. It was brutal too. The Middle Ages and Renaissance period, I mean, they were still hanging, drawing, and quartering people up until the 1700s in places like Britain. And in other parts of Europe, even more recently than that. I mean, they only got rid of the guillotine in France in the 80s. So it's important not to fall into like imperialist propaganda, you know what I mean? Where they demonize the target population as a justification for attacking them and wiping them out. I mean, put it this way. If they hadn't been colonized, would the Native Americans have wiped themselves out? No. They'd still be around. So what's worse? What they were doing to themselves or what was done to them by people from Europe? What's worse? Obviously what was done to them by people from Europe. They wouldn't have wiped themselves out. You know what I mean? And it was brutal the way they were wiped out. Shout out to Ali. He says, Ben Whitaker making his Matchroom debut tomorrow. That's right. Did talk about that yesterday. Needs to be looking good, given the fact he's fighting this obscure German. You know? Fighting a completely obscure German. It would be a PR disaster if he went in there and struggled or even lost. So, yeah, he needs to pull his socks up and put on a performance. Am I going live tomorrow? We'll see about that, Charlene. I'm not sure yet. We've got a few things to do. Big up Gaz. He says, you mentioned CBS's chin. Thoughts on Zerdo's chin? Yeah, Zerdo's got a very good chin too. Very, very good chin. Has he ever been down in a fight? The most uncomfortable I've ever seen him was against Bivol. Like, Bivol really overwhelmed him at points. But I don't recall ever seeing Zerdo seriously wobbled, and I don't recall him ever going down. So he's got a great chin. Shout out to Gaz for the super chat. Hannibal Beat says, I always wondered why Europeans didn't enslave Native Americans. They did enslave them to some extent, but Native Americans were more numerous, right, than Africans at the time. There was apparently something like, the estimates say there was something like 80 million Native Americans in North America at the time. 80 million. And so they obviously had big enough numbers that they could put up a real fight. And they were warrior people. So they basically fought to the death. And there is some nuance to the whole North America, colonial, slavery, etc. era, because there were instances of Native Americans who owned slaves, as in African slaves. And there were even instances of black people, right? Who were previously slaves themselves in prior generations, also owning slaves. So there was some nuance to it. Not that that was the norm, but there were instances of that. Of previously enslaved black people that also owned black slaves in North America. You got Ali, he says, he looked great in his last fight against Liam Cameron. Yeah, but it's Liam Cameron. Liam Cameron's not of any particular level, is he? We saw that from Liam Cameron's last fight. So Ben Whittaker's supposed to be looking good against Liam Cameron. And my point is, he's supposed to be looking good against this obscure German guy. Gavazi, is it? But he's going to fight tomorrow night. He's supposed to look good against that guy. Okay, Eggsy says, I've just finished, big up Ali, by the way. Eggsy says, just finished Mike, the TV show about Mike Tyson. Have you seen it? I thought it was horrifically bad. Airbrushed a lot of things that should have been given a lot more discussion. I haven't seen it. Would you care to enlighten us about it? Mike, the TV show? What network is it on? Maxwell says, I don't think Europe were killing children and cutting their hearts out 300 years ago. Not saying Europe wasn't brutal, but comparing the practices and being a moral relativist is absurd. Of course they were doing that 300 years ago in Europe. To their own, of course they were. To the Native Americans, of course they were. The book Blood Meridian is a fictional book which is based upon real events, inspired by real events of what the European colonialists did in America. They were butchering kids. They were RAPEing kids. They were snatching them from their parents and putting them in these re-education camps. This is well documented. What was done to the natives, kids, what was done to native kids by Europeans was absolutely horrendous. So again, what it sounds like is you're coming with, you've been influenced by colonial era propaganda. Yeah? Oh, it was basically trying to justify the conquest of the Americas by saying, oh, they were evil people, so, you know, it doesn't matter that we conquered them because they're evil anyway. Would they have wiped themselves out if they hadn't been conquered? No. They'd still be around. And in North America, there were many, many different tribes, hundreds of different tribes in North America. And the tribes were not all the same. In Central and Southern America, South America, should I say, that's where you had the Aztecs and the Maya who were doing the sacrifices on a mass scale. But who were they sacrificing? They were sacrificing people from other tribes. So it wasn't all the natives who were participating in that. It was certain civilizations, certain cultures that were doing that. To tar them all with the same brush that they were all brutal ritualists, that is disingenuous, okay? They weren't. There were certain groups of native American cultures and whatnot that were doing stuff like that on a mass scale, and there were other groups that were not doing any of that. But again, the imperialist propaganda will tar them all with the same brush. They're all just brutal, you know, ritualist and like, nah, bro, it weren't like that at all. It was a very nuanced situation. And if they hadn't been colonized, they'd still be alive today instead of being basically extinct in North America. There's how many natives left? 2 million or something, tops. And of the ones who are actually pure-blooded, it might be less than that. So they've been literally erased. And there is no justification for that, bro. Big up Ali, he says the showboating will help him perform. Well, I agree with that. I think the showboating helps Ben Whittaker get into the right mind state. I think in the first Cameron fight, the fact he weren't showboating, to me, was an indication that he wasn't comfortable for whatever reason from the opening round. He just wasn't comfortable in the situation. Maybe it was the pressure of the event, fighting in Saudi for the first time. I don't know. But yeah, I think showboating is an indication that Ben Whittaker is comfortable, and therefore you're probably going to get a better performance out of him. How do you know that most tribes were sacrificing? Most of the Native Americans were wiped out. So who's telling their history? It's not the Native Americans themselves telling their history, is it? Most Native Americans have got no record of their history because most of them have been wiped out. It went from 80 million of them, roughly, down to about 2 million. So most of them are gone. And their history is not being told by themselves. It's being told by the people that conquered them. You always got to be careful about that. If your history is being told by the people that conquered you, can you trust them to tell the truth? Warren Paul Williams says, only showboats versus bums. If he showboats versus a top 3, he'll be on his back like the first Liam fight, only this time in the ring. Encircled says 80 million, the highest I have seen is 18 million. Well, the estimates do widely vary, but no, I've seen 80 million. I've seen as high as 120 million. And there are actually maps, which you can see online, which show roughly, I mean, these were maps charted by European settlers, which show roughly how North America was divided among the different tribes. And there were like dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of marked territories, right? And of course, back then, what is today the United States and Canada were not divided by any kind of border. So it was all like one big area. And it was, certain tribes populated certain areas, but many of them were nomadic and they'd moved to different areas, and some of them were cool with each other, others weren't cool with each other, etc., etc., etc. They're all over North America. Let me tell you something, says Hatman is streaming from Sentinel Island. Definitely not, I wouldn't be alive. I'm sure you know that anyway. Yeah, the Sentinelese, is that what they call them? They don't want any outsiders setting foot there. They will bow and arrow you to death. There was some guy, did any of you guys see that? There was some like Christian missionary sometime in the past 15 years or something who tried to go to Sentinel Island, and the local fishermen said, don't go there, bro. Don't do it. He attempted to go there the first time. He paid some fisherman. He wouldn't go all the way up to the beach. And arrows were fired at him. But he didn't learn his lesson, and he went another time. And he was never seen again. Maybe he ended up on the barbecue. Leave them guys alone, bro. Leave them alone. Yeah, he got away and went back. I am the biggest advocate for leaving primitive people alone. Leave them alone. They're literally minding their own business. Yeah, I think one of the fishermen said that when he made it ashore, he was approached by these members of the tribe, and he was holding out his Bible. and all of a sudden, arrows started flying, and this guy got riddled. And the last that they saw of him was they were dragging his body into the forest. Leave them people alone, bro. Seriously, leave them alone. Shout out to Ali. He says, he, as in Ben Whitaker, made the right move to Andy Lee. Well, possibly. We shall see. Maybe you'll be proven right, Ali, that Ben Whitaker did make the right decision to move into Andy Lee. Time will tell. Again, what I was saying, Maxwell Grimes, is what are the sources for what you're talking about, for how widespread that type of practice was? What are the sources? The sources are not Native Americans themselves. Their history is being told by the people who conquered them. There's an obvious conflict of interest there. Because they are not around in big enough numbers to be able to tell their own history. So their history is being told by the people who conquered them. Obviously, it's going to be biased history, isn't it? Focusing on the worst aspects and tarring them all with the same brush. Hannibal says, Man, I'm sorry, I just don't have no faith in Bonnet Ben Whitaker right now. Has Ben Whitaker been wearing a bonnet? Yeah, we need to take a stand against the Bonnet crew. It's gotten completely out of hand. Triple R says apparently the Sentinelese were relatively peaceful when they were first contacted by a British expedition, but after this expedition, a few of them died and they were not so peaceful afterwards. Yeah, maybe there was some disease, you know, that they didn't have immunity for, which wiped out some of them, and they thought, nah, we ain't letting nobody on this island again. No one. Yeah, I agree with that. There needs to be a fine for wearing a bonnet as a man. Let's fine them. British Boxing Board of Control. Any boxer getting caught wearing a bonnet in or out of competition, getting taxed. Let me tell you something, says blame ATL. Yeah, ATL somewhere. Shout out to Hannibal Beats, by the way. I think he's from ATL. Yeah, he's from ATL. That's somewhere I'm in no rush to ever go. ATL. ATL. I'm in no rush to ever go there, bro. It seems like a weird place. In ATL, they do drive-bys wearing bonnets and Crocs. Have you guys ever seen those pop the balloon shows? The ones in America are often in ATL. And like the standard of human being on those shows is so low. It's terrifying. Do you know what I mean? It is terrifying. How low the quality of human being is. People say pop the balloon, give me a joke. Yeah, pop the balloon is quite funny at times, but I wince. Do you know what I mean? At the standard of women on those shows, and yeah, even the men are looking crazy on a lot of those shows. And so maybe Hannibal Beats can tell us about is it his hometown, ATL? Is it as bad as it seems on television and on social media? Is ATL that bad? Not just in terms of, you know, violence, but also the weird social scene. The way people behave and dress and whatnot, it just seems weird. Any thoughts on Muta Baruka? I don't know what to make of him, to be honest. He's a little odd himself. For those of you who don't know, Mutabaruka is like a Jamaican, quote-unquote, Rasta social commentator. Does he have a radio show or something? You know why I'm kind of weirded out by Mutabaruka? Is because I once saw an interview he did with a guy who'd been interfered with as a child, and he was interfered with by a man. This is in Jamaica. And Mutabaruka started asking him about this particular encounter that he'd had with this guy who interfered with him, and getting the guy to actually talk about it in graphic detail. And then he asked him, did he bust in your mouth? I mean, what? What kind of question? This is weird, bro. After I heard that Mutabaruka interview, I was like, nah, man, I ain't listening to this guy again. That's weird behavior. To be asking questions. Yeah, pause. That's weird behavior to be asking questions like that. What's all that about? Yeah, indeed. Like, what is all that about? Hannibal Beach says, ATL has always been weird. I can't even lie or try to front. Is it worse than Birmingham? Well, yeah. A lot worse than Birmingham. As far as I can tell from people who live there and have been there and stuff like that, and what I've seen online, it's a lot worse than Birmingham. It's a lot more weird. Eggsy says, have you read much about the East India Company? I feel like it's a cautionary tale we should all be paying attention to these days. Unrestricted capitalism. Yes, I know a lot about the British East India Company and their machinations during the colonial era. But to be honest, I think some of the companies today are worse and more powerful. They just haven't been exposed to the same extent that the British East India Company has, because they're still running-ish. But for the record, I tend to lean more towards capitalism, right? I'm definitely not a socialist. Well, obviously capitalism has no moral base, so you need laws in place to prevent. And I'm not just talking about, domestic, but also international laws in place to prevent certain practices. But, I believe in the basic concept of value for value and not having your wings clipped if you are a talented person, which is what in certain expressions of socialism they do. If you're a talented person, a driven person, you get your wings clipped. So you can't actually make the most of your talent and ability. And that is a real, in my view, and for my taste, if I can put it that way, something that's really sinister. Matt Borgerson says, wasn't the British East India Company involved in child slavery and slavery in general? Yes, it was. It was big during the colonial era. In Africa, a place like India and what have you. Throughout Asia. Little Jacob says, the moisture in ATL is out of control. ATL is like Rainbow Central. But it's a weird one, right? Because ATL is like ratchet culture combined with rainbow culture. Like ratchet, gangster, ghetto, but also rainbow. It's this weird hodgepodge of different things. Yeah, it's hood zesty. Very weird down there. Let me tell you something, says ATL gangbangers have BBLs. June Sports says, that's a crazy comment there. It's a crazy comment, by the way. ATL gangbangers have BBL. That's crazy. That's what, right, Warren Williams. Yeah, there is a station called East India. That's right. Have I got a pink bonnet? I ain't got any kind of bonnet. Yeah, Young Thug is the first rapper I remember who started coming with that zesty dress code. I remember seeing a video of Young Thug way back in the days where he had like chandelier earrings on. And I was like, what in the world is going on? He was wearing dresses and he had these like chandelier earrings. I was like, what in the world is going on? This might have been, I don't know, 2010-ish, give or take a couple of years. How much do I currently weigh? I don't know exactly because I don't have a scale where I'm staying right now, so I can only estimate. I would estimate maybe about 245. Danny says, what is the difference between rap and hip hop? Well, originally those two words were interchangeable. There was no difference. It was just two words for the same genre of music. But subsequently, people have created a differentiation where rap is basically like gangster stuff and hip hop is more backpacker stuff. That's the differentiation that I've seen people make in recent decades. But I can assure you, back in the 90s, there was no differentiation between rap and hip hop. It was all the same thing. But now it's like, no. Rap is like the gangster street stuff, and hip hop is like backpacker stuff. Oz Racing says drill music is garbage. Yeah, lyrically, the vast majority of it is absolute garbage. And there's no real artistry to it either. You know, back in the days, there were loads of gangster rappers who were extremely skilled lyricists. So even if you don't like the subject matter, you can respect the rhyming skills, you know, the flows and all that type of stuff. But nowadays, you got most drill rappers who have got no skills at all. They're mush-mouth mumble rappers, and they're talking loads of slackness, to use an old term, an old Caribbean term, slackness, right? So yeah, I would say drill rap, as far as the lyrical ability and lyrical content, is mostly absolute garbage. But I do like a lot of the beats. Don't get it twisted, the beats all sound the same. But I do like the style of production in a lot of drill rap, particularly UK drill, by the way. For me, UK drill beats are the best drill beats. So much so that a lot of American drill rappers are actually getting their beats from the UK. So I do like a lot of the production. I just find it interesting sonically. You know, the way they use the 808s. Do I like Immortal Technique? I thought he was pretty good for what he was. He's not like one of my favorite rappers or anything. But when he first came out, he was a very good storyteller. You know, songs like Dance with the Devil and whatnot. Jacob says, hi, Hatman, just joined the live. Have you ever done any training other than boxing? I've just started doing kickboxing and really enjoying it. Well, yeah, as a kid, I messed around and did a bit of karate and judo. I don't think I ever did kickboxing training. My brother, the next brother up from me, did Muay Thai. I don't think I ever went to any of his Muay Thai classes or anything like that they used to go to, as far as I can recall. But yeah, as a kid, did a bit of judo and karate and stuff like that. It's back in the 80s. You know, maybe very early 90s. Hannibal Beat says, gold teeth, cross-dressing, Jerry curl, gangsters from ATL is what I grew up seeing. It's always been a large amount of zesty people in Atlanta. Okay, Lakvinder Singh says, just binge watch Stranger Things Season 5, first 4 episodes. I was going to give that a go, actually. I was going to give that a go. Because I've seen the previous 4 seasons of Stranger Things. And I was like, let me give Season 5 a go. It just dropped, right? I'll give it a go. Because Stranger Things was originally based upon the Montauk Project. And they were going to call it Montauk. They're actually going to call the show Montauk originally. And you can hear like the similarity between, because Stranger Things is set in a town called Hawkins. Hawkins was Montauk, right? You can see it kind of sounds similar. And there are various other similarities. Montauk is in New York State. Is it in New York State or is it in New England? It's in New York State. It's on Long Island. Like if you go on Long Island and keep driving, you end up in Montauk. And it is said that they were doing like experimentation, the US government. And part of the experimentation, so it is said, was regarding psychic abilities and whatnot. Big up Ali for the super chat. It says, what I don't understand or make sense is how Buddy Jack is WBC champion when he don't fight for many years or defend the belt. It's not right. I agree it's not right, but that's what the WBC do. That's what they're known for doing. You go all the way back to when Vitaly Klitschko was inactive for best part of 2 years. They didn't strip him. And when they eventually stripped him, they made him champion emeritus, meaning if he wanted to return to the ring, he'd get a title shot for the WBC belt immediately. So they did that with Vitaly Klitschko. They did that with Jamal Charlo. You guys remember that? He was out the ring for damn near 2 years and they wouldn't strip him. So yeah, the WBC have got this history of allowing not all of their champions, but certain champions to have carte blanche when it comes to inactivity. Cherry picking opponents and stuff like that. So yeah, Ali, they've been at it for years. And for whatever reason, Badu Jack is still in their favor. They like him for some reason. Is it the Saudi influence on the WBC? Or some other Arab influence? Because Badou Jack lives out there in the Middle East. I think he lives in the UAE. And he's apparently quite tight with the princes and whatnot out there. So maybe they're the ones applying the pressure and insisting that Badou Jack stays in the mix. Because he's definitely got a lot of fans out there where he lives. But I agree with you completely. Badou Jack still having some type of hold over the WBC belt is ridiculous. We be crooks. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with the super chat. Some people say they can't super chat, other people can. It's weird. I wish I had some answers for you, my good man, but I don't know what YouTube does with this stuff. It's very odd. Big up Swaggins for the super chat. High five. That reminds me of Ali G. High five. not Ali G. Borat. The only movie that Sacha Baron Cohen has ever made that I actually liked was the first Borat movie. That was legitimately hilarious. I wasn't a fan of Ali G. Then he did The Dictator and no, actually Bruno was super zesty, but it was actually quite funny in spots, the parts that you could actually bear to watch because it was so zesty. When he went onto that show, was it like a talk show? And he said he'd bought an African orphan. It was like a fashion accessory. You guys remember that? Have you seen the movie Bruno? Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yo, that was wild. You bought an African orphan as a fashion accessory. Shout out to Swaggins. Big up Ali. He says he should fight Jayo Patira if Zerdo is a coward for unification. He's a coward as well as Zerdo. At this stage of Badou Jack's career, if he's making good money, if he's being paid above and beyond by whoever, the Emiratis or the Saudis or whatever, to fight out there, what is Badou Jack, 40-something? He's not going to take a risk at this stage of the game against Jayo Patira. He's not going to do it. So, as much as we want him to do it or think he should do it, and if he doesn't want to do it, give up the belt, there seems no end in sight. And I don't want to call him a coward because during his day, Badou Jack was a brave fighter. But at this stage of the game, I don't really take him seriously as a fighter. As far as I'm concerned, he's an ex-fighter who is doing some kind of victory lap and is being facilitated by various power players in the boxing industry. I don't take him seriously at all. He's an old man who's got himself into a good situation with some powerful people, and he's riding that train, or that, however you want to describe it, till the wheels fall off. In Circle says Tank Davis would like Bruno. Chess says Bruno disgusted me, I was too young. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He swapped The African orphan for an iPod. Yeah, I remember that. Dear, oh dear. Yeah, dear, oh dear. So yeah, Bruno was just difficult viewing, but funny at certain points. And Borat was funny for the most part. High five! that Borat character was literally hilarious, bro. Shout out to Ali, who says, he's a coward for not fighting Opataya for the belts. Unify, what is he in it for? Same goes for Zerdo. See, I'll be more harsh on Zerdo than I will on Badu Jack because Zerdo is still like a active, proper champion. Badu Jack, I don't think, has the full WBC title, does he? And he's just an old man who used to be a good champion back in the days, who's milking his situation. So I just don't take Badu Jack seriously. I don't expect he'll ever step in there. Even against Zerdo, I don't think he'll probably even fight Zerdo unless they paid him an insane amount of money, but he definitely won't fight Opataya. Because we know what would happen if Opataya fought Badu Jack. Jack would get cleaned out in a few rounds. Badu Jack probably want, I don't know, some crazy 8-figure purse to fight Jai Opataya. So I can't see that happening. In fact, let me have a look at the cruiserweight rankings. No, Badu Jack apparently is still full WBC champion. Wow. And Michael Sislak is the interim champion. Because at one point, Badu Jack had some type of diminished status as WBC cruiserweight champion. But now he's been elevated back to full champion. Wow. And We Be Crooks, the WBC, are facilitating this old man milking this belt against B and C level opposition indefinitely, it would seem. So I'm definitely not defending Badu Jack or the WBC, Ali, don't get me wrong. But I don't know, like the way I look at Badu Jack is he's like an afterthought. I barely even think about him. You know what I mean? I don't view him as a serious boxer anymore. He's just there. In circle, yeah, very nice. Great success. That's probably my favorite Borat expression. Great success. Let me tell you something. It says Badu's forehead cut gave me nightmares. Who did that forehead cut happen against? I forget now. Big up Ali. He says, if I was to meet Turkey in person, I would pressure him to put the right money up for these champions. Zerdo to fight Opataya, force him to fight him. Respectfully, bro, no one is pressuring Turkey. like being realistic, no one is pressuring that guy unless you're a very, very, very high level player in the geopolitical space, you ain't pressuring him. No one is pressuring that guy. But I understand your sentiment. Oh, Marcus Brown. Okay, yeah. Was it deliberate? Because Marcus Brown also cut Artur Beterbiev, didn't he? And in that Beterbiev fight, even though the clash of heads happened in such a way that it could be construed as accidental, I kept looking at the replay thinking, is Marcus Brown just really slick? Because he cut Badou Jack badly and now he's cut Beterbiev badly, or is he just clumsy and reckless? Yeah, that Badou Jack forehead cut was a madness. It was one of those cuts that looked too deep to be true. Because you think the skin on the forehead is not that thick, right? But that cut looked like it was 2 inches deep. Obviously it weren't. Maybe it's because there was swelling around the cut and that. I don't know. 2 inches deep, I'm exaggerating. Do I have interactions today with fighters like AJ or Partridge? No, I don't. Yeah, James DeGale don't look good these days, bro. He looks worse for wear. He's aged very badly, James DeGale. Atavistic Intellect says that cut looked like AI. It's unreal. Yeah, it's a crazy cut. Oz Racing says Joshua ain't been the same since Ruiz beat the stuffing out of him. I agree. Traumatized by that Ruiz fight. Big up Ali. He says, what I mean is have a proper conversation with him about Zerdo taking the fight to unify with Jai. Yeah, it comes down to money, right? We're all assuming that Zerdo is being paid a lot more money to fight David Benavidez than he would have been getting to fight Opataya. While I'm doing this stream, I literally got bit by a mosquito. Damn these flipping mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are bold here, man. Even with the light on, they'll fly right up to you and start trying to extract your blood. They're bold. The mosquitoes in the UK are a bit more polite. You know, they at least wait till it's dark and no one's looking and they think you're asleep, then they'll come for you. But the ones here, nah, bro, they're right in your face. Big up Connor Williams. So yeah, I completely agree with you, Ali, regarding my desire to see Opataya get the opportunity to unify with Zerdo and Badou Jack. And you do wonder why the Saudis haven't put up the type of money necessary to get Zerdo to agree to the fight, because Zerdo apparently did agree, then he pulls out with a mystery injury. And when he pops back up, he isn't rescheduling the Opataya fight. No, he's fighting David Benavidez, who's coming up from a weight class below. So why aren't the Saudis interested enough to make Zerdo an offer he can't refuse? That'd be the question, right? Why aren't they interested enough in that fight? Maybe they just don't think it's commercially viable enough, because they are looking, and Turkey's made this clear, they are trying to get their money back. It wasn't just some vanity project for them or purely for PR for their country. No, they do, if they can, want to turn boxing into a profitable endeavor for them over the long term. Yeah? The initial overspend was just to carve out their place in the market. So maybe they just don't think it's worth the money right now to be paying Zerdo what he wants to fight Jai Opetaia. Maybe they'll be more interested in matching the winner of Zerdo against Benavidez against Opetaia, because the winner of Zerdo Benavidez will have raised their profile to another level. And maybe then there'll be a big enough star for the Saudis to say, okay, let's pay some serious money to get this Opetaia unification over the line. Like Vinder Singh says, Hatman, did you ever rate Adonis Stevenson? Absolutely. I used to love watching Adonis Stevenson fight. There's something about a southpaw with a powerful backhand that is just compelling viewing. You know what I mean? And Adonis Stevenson had a tremendous left hand. At prime, Stevenson was great to watch as far as I'm concerned. You were always just waiting for that backhand to land and then something was going to happen, you know? Yeah, great one-punch power. Although by the end of his career, his final fight, of course, was against Alexander Vozdek. He got stopped in that fight. By that point, his power was not quite the same anymore. Even against Badu Jack, his power weren't quite the same because he'd lost a lot of the velocity on the left hand. He was kind of pushing that punch rather than snapping it by the end. His athleticism started to deteriorate. But in his prime, Adonis Stevenson was great to watch. Don't get it twisted. Once he signed with PBC, and he held that WBC belt for a long time, obviously, but especially after he signed with PBC, he was in a witness protection program. He weren't trying to fight Kovalev. He weren't trying to fight Andre Ward. I think there was one point when he did want to fight Kovalev, and Kovalev didn't want to fight him, so it was a bit of swings and roundabouts. But for the most part, he weren't trying to take any risks. He was in his little comfort zone in Canada, and that was disappointing. But stylistically, I thought he was great to watch. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, the right I would do is, if I was Jai, is to confront Zerdo in person, tell him to stop mucking around. Let's get this on. I want to be a supreme champion. And I agree with that too. I was actually thinking this to myself the other day. Jai Opetaia has been too diplomatic publicly when talking about Zerdo Ramirez. He's been too respectful. He needs to start getting disrespectful now. He needs to do, like you said, confront Zerdo Ramirez in person and get it filmed to have it all over socials. Because what that's going to do is it's going to create public pressure on Zerdo. And even if it doesn't create public pressure on Zerdo initially, it'll at least make the wider public aware of Jai Opetaia. So I agree with you, Ali. I think Opetaia is going to need to take things to the next level. He's going to start having to be more aggressive with his call-outs. And he's got it in him. He's a naturally aggressive guy. So I'm not sure why he's being so diplomatic at the moment. Maybe he's thinking if he gets too disrespectful, Zerdo's not going to fight him. Well, Zerdo's not going to fight him when he's being respectful, evidently, as we've seen. So he might as well get disrespectful now and start calling him out aggressively. So I agree with you, Ali. Big up Striker for the super chat. He says, Hatman, you're one of the last channels that isn't shilling for a network or promoter. I'm assuming you've been approached. What made you resist? Yes, I have been approached. What made me resist is I don't like being under anyone's regime. I don't like working for people. So I have been offered money in the past year by a major, let's just call a media outlet in the boxing world, who wanted me to do content for them, which would be on my channel. In fact, two platforms approached me. And I did not take them up on their offer. Because once you start working with third parties like that, who have clout, they're going to start policing your content. And they're also going to start making demands of you. Oh, where's this? Where's that? And you guys know my schedule is all over the place. I don't like being pressured into, as I say, producing work for somebody else. A third party like that. Because I've already got to produce work for people regarding my business, right? But that's my business. That's not somebody else's business. I don't have a boss. So I'm the kind of person who values my freedom and independence, and I'm willing to take less money in order to maintain it. That's the bottom line. Because Stone Cold said so. And there's nothing wrong with people, if they were in my position and did decide to take those offers, that's their business, right? But for me, I like my independence. I like to be able to go wherever I want to go, move country whenever I want to move country, and not be under anyone else's watch or anyone else's regime. If I agreed to be under somebody else's regime, I could get paid a lot more. I could make a lot more money than I'm making now. But it would be at the sacrifice of my independence. And I'm just I feel comfortable when I'm my own boss completely. Do you know what I mean? That's when I feel comfortable. When I'm working for someone else and someone else has got deadlines to it, it's not for me. Little Jacob says, Hatman sounds like a principled man. I don't even want to say that it's really about my principles. It's just more about my personality type, where I just don't like being under someone else's control. I don't like someone else having power over me and making demands of me, like you need to produce this work by this time and telling me you're doing this week and you have to go there that week. And I just don't like all that stuff. I like to be able to go where I want to go and do what I want to do each and every day without having any kind of boss. It's just how my personality is. Big up Connor Williams, big up Jacob. But I also want to big up Adeola Depot, right? Because he has obviously gone the conventional route, working for various broadcasters, Sky and then eventually DAZN. But the reason I want to big Ade up is because he has maintained his own brand despite working for DAZN. And that is not common. Or not that common, at least not with UK boxing broadcasters, for them to maintain their own brand and actually build their own brand whilst working for the broadcaster. So basically, most of these UK boxing pundits and presenters, if they were to lose their job, they'd basically fade away into obscurity. Yeah, most of them. Even the ones who are former boxers, they'd just fade away into obscurity. But maybe he's just very smart in trying to ensure that doesn't happen to him if he ever is let go or whatever the case, wants to move on and do something else. He's built up his own brand to such an extent that he's going to be good no matter what, even if he goes the independent route in future. Eggsy says, why are the public not as excited about Moses as they were about Joshua? Is it because he isn't facing the Klitschko gridlock? There are multiple reasons. First of all, Moses wasn't an Olympic gold medalist, right? So he didn't turn pro with the fanfare that AJ did. Secondly, AJ came around at the end of a heavyweight boxing dark age, right? So it was easier to stand out and it was easier to get attention coming out of that Klitschko era, right? Emerging out of the end of that Klitschko era. Because the Klitschko era was so boring. Whereas Hatman is emerging out of an exciting era with big personalities and dramatic fights and upsets. And he's trying to, make his own way coming off the back of an era like that. So the boxing landscape is very different today to the one which AJ emerged on after the 2012 Olympics. Also, there's AJ's image. AJ had a suave, also politically correct, polished GQ magazine type image, which brought a lot of women in. Hatman doesn't really have that kind of image. So there's a multitude of reasons why the public are not as excited about him as they were for AJ. Jacob says AJ is a better talker than Moses as well. Shout out to Ali. Yep, well, if you want to type a message, I'm happy to read it out, Ali. Big up, Ali. That's right, Kylie. AJ tapped into the female demographic. As far as AJ being a better talker than Moses, neither of them are great talkers. But Moses talks in this kind of monotone fashion, which your average grandma or female probably wouldn't resonate with. Moses is not a great interview, but I still think he's a bit better interview than AJ. Ali says, Moses needs to shake off his nonchalant gimmick. Boxing is all about drama and excitement. Well, I don't think it's a gimmick, personally. I think that's just how he is. I don't think it's like a put on. A lot of the young kids of his generation are like that. They talk in this kind of monotone and sound like they've been drinking lean. That's how a lot of them talk now. Phoenix, you seem to have completely misunderstood what I was saying. You're saying that you're disagree. He says, I disagree, Hatman. Who in this heavyweight era has the personality of a Wilder, Joshua, or Fury? This generation of heavyweights is dead. It's another boring era like the 2008 to 2015 Klitschko era. Again, you seem to have misconstrued what I said. What I said was that when AJ came around, it was at the end of the boring Klitschko era. So that's why AJ was able to stand out, and that's why people were excited about him. That's one of the reasons people were excited about him. And the point I'm making is people are not as excited about Moses because he's emerging off the back of an exciting era, right? It's a tough act to follow, basically, when you're coming off the back of the Wilder, AJ, Partridge, Dylan White, Chisora, Usyk. When you're coming off the back of that era, it's a tough act to follow. It's like Larry Holmes coming off the back of the Ali era. Tough act to follow. Do you know what I mean? Very, very tough act to follow. Big up Ali, he says, what I want to ask is, both Opetaia and Usyk are left-handed southpaws, good footwork and movement and punch output. Is there any difference between them? Yeah, there's a lot of difference between them. Usyk is a lot more fundamentally sound than Opetaia. Opetaia is more upright, doesn't keep his hands up as well. His footwork isn't as good. His defensive footwork isn't as good. You know, normally Usyk, when he throws a shot, he'll dip his head low and then he'll spin off to his own right to avoid the counter from an orthodox fighter. Usyk is damn near impeccable from a technical perspective. Usyk also isn't an emotional fighter. He's all business. He's all coldly calculated in that ring. Whereas Jai Opetaia fights on emotion a lot of the time. He's an angry man. And that is one of the things that causes him to make a lot of technical mistakes. I don't think he's as obsessed as Usyk is with being technically immaculate. So yeah, there's a lot of difference between them. Also, Usyk, I think, is just naturally heavier than Opetaia. Opetaia is quite a slender guy, slender, athletic, whereas Usyk's quite, you know, ruggedly built. I think he's a naturally bigger guy than Opetaia, by my way of looking at things. So there's a technical difference between them. There's a personality difference between them. Stylistically, I'd say Opetaia is a bit faster. But as I say, Usyk, maybe physically, I suspect Usyk is physically stronger than Opetaia. Quite a bit physically stronger. I don't think Opetaia is going to be manhandling 260-pound heavyweights the way that Usyk has been. Well, shout out to Ali. Okay, Phoenix says, I was responding to your video a few months ago talking about the future generation. I think these newer guys are quite stale. Well, you might be right, but the point I was making in that video is that at the start of the AJ, etc., Dylan White generation, you know, Partridge, Wilder, a lot of the guys came across as quite stale too. Like if you look at early interviews with Dylan White and Derek Chisora, they're very awkward and not particularly interesting to listen to or watch. But over time, they got more comfortable on camera and they came out of their shell and turned into massive personalities. That might not happen with the new generation, but I want to give them time and see if they come out of their shell a bit. I mean, Mike Tyson, believe it or not, when he first emerged on the scene, he was kind of a bit awkward on camera. He wasn't the greatest interview, a young Mike Tyson coming up through the ranks. It's not really until he became champion and he started associating with Don King, that's when all the crazy stuff was coming out. Now, he did say one thing which was seen as controversial before he won the heavyweight title, and that was regarding the Jesse Ferguson fight where he said he was trying to push the guy's nose bone up into his brain. He said that post-fight in the locker room when he was being interviewed by journalists. And that was a sign of things to come, right? But for the most part, Mike Tyson was not a great interview in his early years, a little shy in front of the media, and didn't really say that many crazy things. But as I say, once the Don King influence came in, it brought him out of his shell, and he started saying all sorts of crazy stuff. And he turned into a much more, for the public, compelling personality outside the ring. So I just like to see the new generation be able to find their feet, and we might see some personality from some of them potentially. Big up Active Learner for the super chat. He says, what's your opinion, bro? Have an option to do this exam and increase my salary significantly. Only issue is exam center makes people use palm vein scan. Wow. That is quite a conundrum, bro. All I can tell you is I wouldn't want to do it, and by the sounds of it, you don't want to do it. I would say, do what makes you feel comfortable and what you think you can live with. I ain't judging you, bro. Maybe you got family to feed, It's very invasive, isn't it? At least you're not compromising your physical health. But maybe it's like biometrics that you're not comfortable with. At the end of the day, if you got a British passport, it's a biometric passport, including mine. I don't like the fact it's a biometric passport, but if I want to get from A to B, I got to use it. So, yeah, I'm definitely not judging you, whatever decision you choose to make, my bro. Especially if you got mouths to feed, got to do what you got to do. Big up Active Learner for the super chat. I guess there's no opt-out option for that particular thing as we move into this dystopian future. Because I'm still one of these awkward individuals who opts out of airport scanners. And it causes a big commotion, and they go and get the manager and, oh, you don't like my scanner, and it's not radiation, Yeah, no, it's millimeter waves, Okay, well, they make a big song and dance about it when you turn down the scan at the airport. You get a pat down instead, the opt-out. They try and make it as awkward and inconvenient for you as possible. Big up Otto Livingston for the super chat. He says, Ben Davison cannot take a timer all the way. Lacks corner experience when fighters get into crisis. Should he not leave now while young? Ben Davison has a lot of experience now. He had experience with Tyson Fury, aka Luke Partridge. He had experience with Billy Joe Saunders. He had experience, of course, with Lee Wood. Lee Wood's been in many a crisis with Ben Davison in his corner. He's had experience with Fabio Wardley in tough situations. So I actually think Ben Davison, how can I word this? I think people are a little harsh on Ben Davison, to be honest, because whenever his fighters win, crickets. Nobody wants to give him any credit. But whenever his fighters lose, everyone's saying he's rubbish. He doesn't know what he's doing. But for me, I'm like, no, I look at, yeah, when his fighters lose, but also when his fighters win. You got to give him credit for that. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not Nostradamus here. I don't know whether Ben Davison's going to be the right guy for Hatman over the long haul. But I'm going to watch Hatman and see if there are chinks in his armor, and whether those chinks in his armor are rectified under Ben Davison or not. That's ultimately the measure of how good a trainer is for a fighter. Whether the fighter continues to improve and solidifies their game. We'll see. A shout out to Otto Livingston for the super chat. Yeah, Vidal Sassoon, Ben Davison. Kylie says, remember when Liston pulled a gun on Ali? Yeah, that was from the movie Ali. And that was not Sonny Liston, that was an actor. That movie's hilarious, by the way. Ali played himself in that movie. It was probably the most self-indulgent thing I've ever seen a boxer do. Ali's performance itself was pure comedy. I did like the tune, the Ali song. He's Muhammad Ali. He floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee. Muhammad, the black Superman. He calls to the other guy, Ali. Catch me if you can. Yeah, back in the 60s and 70s, even the 80s, boxers were making actual proper songs with like a band and stuff like that. The boxer weren't always the one doing the singing. In some instances, they participated in a bit of the singing. Larry Holmes also had a theme tune. This is Larry Holmes. I forget all the words now. But Larry Holmes' tune was actually fire. This is Larry Holmes. It was kind of in that old, 60s, 70s Motown style, Larry Holmes' tune. And I still can't find, I've only ever seen the Larry Holmes tune online once. I think somebody posted it on Facebook. I can't remember if it was an embedded video on Facebook, as in or uploaded directly to Facebook, or whether it was a YouTube video embedded on Facebook. I can't remember now. But that's the only time I saw the tune. The video for the tune and whatnot, and heard the tune, and it was fire. It was fire. Big up Kieran Malcolm for the super chat. He says, yes, Hatman. I took a picture with Devin Haney earlier today at the Dubai Mall and baffled at how he made 135 not too long ago. Big up Hatman. I guess he's looking a lot more filled out now, right? 147 pounds. I've seen Devin Haney too in person when he was still a lightweight. Ali says, let's see what happens after Opataya deals with his mandatory. Well, yeah. But at the end of the day, the ball is not in Opataya's court. It's in Zurdo Ramirez's court or in Benavidez's court if he beats Zurdo. And Benavidez has indicated that he doesn't intend to stay at cruiserweight. He intends to move back down to 175. How realistic that is, we shall see. But when he was asked about a potential Opataya fight, he was non-committal, which doesn't surprise me. Oh, for real? Truth Channel says Larry Holmes' song on YouTube. You've managed to find it? Marley says Roy Jones' song was the best. You all must have forgot. I gotta disagree. The best rap song from a boxer was Roy Jones' You all must have forgot. Yeah. But song of any genre? Nah, bro. The Larry Holmes tune was better than anything I've heard. And the Muhammad Ali tune was pretty good too. He's Muhammad Ali. He floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee. Muhammad. Yeah. Shout out to Jacob, he says, I saw a bloke taking a plank of wood as carry-on. That's bizarre. I'm surprised he was allowed. He took a plank of wood as carry-on? Wasn't he asked about it? Like, why is taking a plank of wood on? It's weird. Yeah, Can't Be Touched is better than the other Roy Jones song. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, Can't Be Touched is the better Roy Jones song. That you all must have forgot. Can't Be Touched is much better. That's the best rap song that any boxer has ever made. It's Can't Be Touched. That's right. Ali says, Hatman, I don't know if you will believe me, but Billum Smith was offered $10 million to fight Opataya for the IBF world title and turned it down. Ask Turkey himself. Jai said it himself. Well, I don't have access to Turkey to ask him himself. I know that Billum Smith didn't want the fight. As far as the figures that he was offered, I haven't heard any figures before, but if you say it's 10 million, whatever it was, CBS didn't think it was enough for the beating that he surely would have taken against Opataya. Jacob says, weirdest thing I've ever seen. Me and my mates were debating for ages why he would need to check in a plank of wood. Wildest thing is, he didn't have anything else on his person, just a plank of wood. Yeah, that is random. That is very random. Yeah, I remember Prince Nassim's rap song, and it was diabolically bad. It was horrible. It was so cheesy. Prince Nassim's rap song was kind of in the same type of mode as like those cheesy England football team songs, right? You know, where John Barnes came in and rapped? Dear, oh dear, oh dear. There was loads of like British sportsmen and whatnot back in the 90s and late 80s that tried their hand at making rap songs. And like the John Barnes bit, the John Barnes rap was embarrassing. And the Prince the Seam rap was maybe even more embarrassing. We got Ali, says, Hatman, been following you since 2017 or 2018. They're much appreciated for the support, my bro. Jacob says, I met John Barnes at Anfield. Sound bloke. Yeah, the John Barnes rap was on that. Is it we're singing for England, England. And then Johnny Barnes comes on with, you gotta that cheesy rap that John Barnes came in with. Well, like I say, Prince the Seam's rap was worse than that. Horrible. Oh my God, yes, Hannibal Beats. I have heard Steven Seagal's Jamaican dancehall songs. Since we're in the realm of the bizarre, it don't get much more bizarre than that. Yes, Steven Seagal, unless it's AI, I'm assuming they were real songs because they were old enough. It was like before the time of AI, but yeah, Steven Seagal did some Jamaican dancehall songs. Jacob says, I'm going to have to listen to this Prince Nassim rap now. I won't add it to my playlist, mind. Phoenix says, I've been watching since I was 16. Now I'm 27. Look how time flies. Yeah, bro, don't remind me. Catch me if you can, because I'm an England man. Is that one of the lines, Kylie, from the John Barnes rap? Johnny Barnes, the Liverpool ace back in the days. Bruce Grobbelaar, you guys remember him? Little short South African goalkeeper who used to play for Liverpool. Bruce Grobbelaar with a mustache. Little Jacob says, I wonder if Seagal switched his wig for dreads when he was singing dancehall. Yeah, like Snoop Dogg. You know when Snoop Dogg went through that weird Snoop Lion phase? Did he have a dreadlocks wig on? Big up Connor Williams for the super chasers. I'm out, Hatman. Loving these night flights. Big up. And big up yourself, Connor Williams, every time. Much respect. Phoenix says it was 2014, 2015 in the Klitschko era. The way you used to trash how boring it was is what made me subscribe. That's all we could do, you know? It was a horrible era. The heavyweight dark ages. Whoa! Whoa! Hannibal Beat says, yo, Hatman, after all the talk, Snoop Dogg made a rainbow song. Is that right? Oh my days. Say it ain't so. Snoop Dogg made a rainbow song? How you gonna go from Rastafari to rainbow? Indeed. Wait, what? Snoop, are you sure it's not AI? I hope it's AI. Hannibal says it's new too. He did it recently. Damn. Is that how compromised he is? Is that how compromised Snoop Dogg is? Big up Hussein. I stumbled on your YouTube channel by accident and joined Patreon to see what you're about. That's about 6 years ago, I think. Big up Hussein. I'm going to say something which most fans of rap music, hip hop music would vehemently disagree with. But, well, you can't disagree with somebody's preference. It's just their preference, isn't it? I'm not saying one is better than the other. All I can tell you is, shock horror, I was never really a big fan of West Coast rap. But if I had to pick between Snoop Dogg and Tupac, I'd take Snoop Dogg. I always found Snoop Dogg's music more entertaining. You know? Never liked Tupac's music. I understand why people do like him, but I just didn't resonate with me. Snoop Dogg, not a great rapper from a technical perspective, but he had a unique style, unique voice, and was unintentionally funny. I always found Snoop Dogg to just be hilarious. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like a UK equivalent of Snoop Dogg would be D-double-E. D-double-E is unintentionally funny. And that's why I like D-double-E. The same with Snoop Dogg. He's just unintentionally funny, entertaining. In his music, I'm talking about. What do I think of Suge Knight? He's an unsavory individual. That's what I'd say of Suge Knight. He's an unsavory individual. Little Jacob says Snoop is a typical Bay Area rapper. But Snoop isn't from the Bay. He's from Long Beach, California, right? Unless I'm getting my United States geography wrong, the Bay is up by Oakland, San Francisco. That's the Bay Area. Long Beach is not classed as a Bay Area, is it? Or have I been mistaken all these years? You guys tell me. There you go, D-double-E. Oh my gosh. Bit-a-bop-bop. If it's me you're mad at, you'll get a scar on your chest like Sagat. Old Jacob says, I thought he was from the Bay. No, he ain't from the Bay. He's from Long Beach. No, he's not from Oakland, bro. Snoop's from Long Beach. Ali says, happy Black Friday, Hatman. I know it's now over. Do people celebrate Black Friday? I thought it was just like a commercial thing. Jacob says, Hatman, you were having a debate on your live the other day about who the best rapper actor is. I don't think you mentioned Kano, which would be my shout. Yeah, Kano's pretty decent. Kano's a pretty good actor. I will concur on that. Touche, Striker. All celebrations are commercial things. Yeah, but some celebrations have got a non-commercial backstory behind them, ostensibly, whereas I don't really know the backstory with Black Friday. Didn't it just start off as a commercial? I don't know. And it's an American thing, right? Black Friday. That's where it started. Because growing up in the UK, there was no Black Friday. It was something that was imported from America. Just like Halloween. Now, Halloween, as I understand it, does have its roots in Europe originally, in pagan Europe. But it stopped being celebrated in Europe, I want to say some centuries ago, but it was revived or continued in America, and then it re-entered Europe from the United States, Halloween. Oh yeah, I know that Black Friday's in the UK, it's been in the UK for years now, but back in the 1990s, there was no Black Friday in the UK. In the 1990s, early 2000s, there was nothing like Black Friday. Never heard of it at that point. Sports fan says DWE is so authentically Black British. Only we find him good. He's hilarious legend. Yeah, you can't see DWE crossing over in the United States, for sure. They wouldn't understand. Sam Donahue says Eminem's 8 Mile, he acted okay. Yeah, he acted a lot better in 8 Mile than 50 Cent did in Get Rich or Die Trying. There was somebody in the live chat a couple of streams ago who was saying that 50 Cent's acting was good. I was like, hell no, bro. 50 Cent in Get Rich or Die Trying was terrible. Oh, he was terrible. There you go, Triple R. Halloween was originally Celtic from Ireland and Scotland, but was only popular in the British Isles again after being popular in America. Yeah, so it was like European, but then kind of faded away in Europe and was no longer practiced, but was continued on in America by European settlers who then brought it back into Europe centuries later. And Father Christmas also has interesting, origins. Because there's Father Christmas and then there's Santa Claus, which were kind of two different characters that were merged together. I actually did a Patreon episode about Father Christmas maybe a year or so ago. The origins of Father Christmas and Santa Claus. It's quite interesting. Because one of them has its roots in pagan Europe, pre-Christian Europe. Yeah, Fredro Starr's a pretty good actor, I suppose. Yeah, he's pretty good. Although he's always trying to play a tough guy in every movie, you know, and I'm like, eh. Triple R says 50 Cent was decent as a boxing promoter in the film Southpaw, clearly inspired by Don King. The most obvious kind of rip-off of Don King was in the Rocky movies. They had a promoter who was like a blatant copy of Don King in the Rocky. You guys remember that? Did Don King try and sue Sylvester Stallone over it? Because it was literally Don. They gave him a different name, but it was literally Don King. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, what's your overall opinion on Ben Whitaker? What do you think his potential will be? Yeah, there you go. Touch me and I'll sue. That's the one. Was that his name, George Washington Duke? The character's name in the movie? Or are you referring to something else? Overall impression of Ben Whitaker. The jury's still out for me. I'm skeptical. There's a lot of athleticism there. But is he a fighter? Because his athleticism isn't so outrageous that his heart won't get tested. And we've already seen it. You know, some fighters have got such outrageous athleticism and their skill level is so vastly superior to the vast majority of their opponents that their hearts never get tested. Their chins barely get tested. You know what I mean? Sometimes fighters come along like that once in a while. Ben Whitaker's not on that level. He's athletic, yeah, but he's not outrageously athletic. And therefore, he's not going to get very far without passing a gut check. So the jury's still out for me. I'm more leaning towards the notion that he'll get found out sooner rather than later. But a lot of it depends on the landscape at 175, because I am assuming that Beterbiev, Bivol, maybe even Benavidez won't be around that much longer. Benavidez, you would have thought would be around the longest, but who knows? Maybe he moves up to cruiserweight full time after Jay Opataya moves up to heavyweight. And that might leave an opportunity for a Ben Whitaker, who is in his late 20s. What is he, 28 now? We'll see. If the division is weak enough, I can see Ben Whitaker becoming a world champion. It all depends on the strength of the division at the top. But like many people, I got questions about his heart. Big up D-Man for the super chat. Little Jacob says, Hatman, who you got, Clark versus TKV? I got Clark on points. But I find it difficult to pick between them, to be honest. They're both boxers, you know? Both got good boxing skills. TKV is smaller, but he's slicker and more fluid. Fraser Clark's got a better amateur pedigree. It's going to be a boxing match, I think. Hopefully not a boring one. But I'm leaning towards a Fraser Clark victory. Kieran says, I really don't enjoy Clark's style. Me neither. It's like boxing by the numbers, you know? A textbook boxing style. It's not very easy on the eye. But TKV, because of his clinching, also isn't very easy on the eye because he clinches a lot. But because he's a lot more fluid than Frazer Clarke, when he's not clinching, he is better to watch. So Ali says he was corny on TalkSport, TKV. Don't know what that was all about, begging it. Lieutenant Frank says, has Shalom deliberately scheduled the Clarke fight against Whitaker's, on the same night? I don't know, man. Is he that petty? Perhaps he is. Because Clarke TKV is going to be on terrestrial television, free to watch. Whereas DAZN is behind, Ben Whitaker on DAZN is obviously on a subscription service. So maybe he's hoping to take eyes away, but I can't imagine he'll take too many eyes away. There's been no promotion that I'm aware of for this Clarke TKV fight, unless it's been promoted on the BBC main channels. Has it? I don't know. I haven't watched the BBC in many years, and I don't live in the UK anymore. But certainly online, I've seen barely any promotion for Clarke TKV. Ben Whitaker's got a big social media following. Is Ben Shalom really going to win that war? JR says, Clarke always seems to me to expect the AJ treatment because of his amateur accomplishments. He has been a horrible watch as a pro. But to give him some credit, as I did yesterday, that first performance against Fabio Wardley has aged pretty well, hasn't it? Given what Wardley's gone on to achieve. Lieutenant Frank says, no promotion I've seen in the UK at all for the Clarke fight. Yeah, it's an odd one. All right, peeps, I'm going to shut this one down. I'd like to thank everyone for being with me aboard this night flight. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were the Sweet Maths, Kayvon Green, Ali, Gaz, Swaggins, Who else we got here? Striker. Active Learner, Otto Livingston. Jacob. Kieran Malcolm, Connor Williams, D-Man. Big up for the super chats. And again, thank you to everyone else for joining the conversation. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.